Hey everyone, and welcome to this session on Headless Wagtail. I'm Freddie Mixel, and I'm thrilled to be here today to share a journey into the exciting world of headless CMSs. Specifically, we're going to dive into a powerful architectural pattern deploying a headless Wagtail CMS on Google Cloud paired with a lightning-fast static Next.js frontend hosted on Netlify. Now, you might be wondering, why this combination? What's the big deal about static sites and headless CMSs? Well, that's exactly what we're going to uncover today, and we're going to look at how flexible, performant, and how great of a developer experience you'll have on projects like this. So let's break down how all these pieces fit together. So at the heart of our architecture is our Wagtail CMS, which is running on Google App Engine. This is where your content team or like your team, whatever, they manage all the digital experiences or content or whatever you have that you're going to deliver. And then Wagtail exposes this through the API. And this is sort of like the bridge between the front end and the back end of this site. Um, and then on the front end, we're using Netlify in this example, which is a static site host where we can build a Next.js front end and then serve that statically so we don't have to continuously hit the API every time someone wants to look at one of our pages. You can see here we have two different flows sort of outlined. The developer deploys a backend change. Whenever this happens, all your static assets, like anything inside Wagtail, like JavaScript for Wagtail itself, any customizations, any assets that are part of Wagtail, they'll all get uploaded automatically through the storage configuration to cloud storage. And App Engine will build your new version of your Wagtail site and deploy it on your link. Then from there, your CMS users can upload content. In this example, we're showing specifically if they upload an asset like an image, that also will then get synced over to cloud storage, and the database will remember the URL for that. Then also, developers could make a change to the front end, and they would push to GitHub, which makes it available to Netlify. In our example here, we have a deploy page on the Wagtail site, which allows us to hit a webhook on Netlify to build the site. And I've also disabled deploys from Netlify itself. Technically, we'll go into that a little bit later, but that way, the only place things could get deployed are from this Wagtail front end. And so that kicks off the build, goes there to Netlify. So let's jump into looking at the GitHub repo. Okay, so here we are on the Headless CatTube GitHub repo. You can see the front end and back end code are both separated by those directories. And we have the Netlify configuration for deploying the front end, this README file, a make file, and a gitignore. The make file is pretty important, so we'll quickly go over that. You can use this to create your virtual environment with pyenv. So you just run make dev env, it will install this version of Python if you don't already have it, and then set your local environment to that version, and then create a virtual environment called cattubenv that you can then run pyenv activate cattubenv. So run this make devenv and then run this to go inside your virtual environment. And then you can install all the dependencies with make dev update, and then you can run make dev freeze if you want to, but it should already have everything in there. And then you can run make dev, and that will run the backend. Well, actually, I guess you'd have to run make migrate first to create your database. Then make admin will create your super user so you can log into Wagtail, and then you would run make dev to run the backend. Some other things we have here, proxying the DB. So you have to update this value here with your host name from Cloud SQL, but you can proxy your database so that you're able to perform actions using your local machine against the database, like running a migration, for example. And we'll get more into that on how that works with this repo specifically. We also have deploy CMS here, and that is pretty straightforward. It's just looking for this app.yaml file and deploying to my project. So you have to update this if you're going to use this repo with your Google Cloud project ID, which is just right on the main dashboard page of Google Cloud, if you're inside your project already. And then make static just collects all the static files. This isn't super important to run locally, I don't think. It's more or less something that we do right before we deploy. We'll make sure we have all the static assets already up on Google Cloud, and then we deploy the backend, sort of part of that flowchart that we looked at earlier. And going back to the Cloud SQL proxying, if you look in your dev settings, you'll see we have this config here for use proxy. So if you pass use proxy true, make dev, then it will pull out the storages and the database password from the production configuration file, but it will pipe it through localhost here. Well, actually, I guess the proxy is already, so you run the proxy in one tab with the make proxy DB, and then in your other tab you run use proxy true make dev, and that will pick up on that proxy database, and this will just make sure it reads from it, and yeah, uses the storages also, so you see all your assets coming from the cloud. Nice way to just also test before you deploy to production, even though it is just the data and the assets, but just to double check that those are looking good before you, with the build of Wagtail that you have before you push it up. So that's a nice feature of this repo. And then, well, I guess we could look here at the models. This is just a YouTube video page that I created with some values that allow you to build out functionality for YouTube iframes, just as part of the example. And you can see that all the a lot of the fields here are added to the Wagtail REST API, and that's how we're sending it over to Netlify whenever we build. So now let's take a look at the front end. You can see services here, video service. This is just pulling in the next public backend URL, so that this will be an environment variable you'll have to set to the URL for wherever you deploy your Wagtail on App Engine. I just use the App Engine generated URL with the project ID in it usually, but you're free to also create your own URL for that. But you can see this is hitting the pages endpoint with specific fields of video ID, thumbnail full, and since it is a page type, we're specifying videos.youtube video page as the type, so we get only those back. And then we just have this basic fetch functionality with types that send back the videos to the front end, so we can read those from Wagtail when the page is being built. So if you just go up here into pages, good example here is watch by video ID. You can see we have some hard-coded data, and then we are receiving a video detail here, which has a video ID that we pass to the YouTube video embed player, and then our SSG data here from Wagtail. We call the video service get videos. This is just hitting the Wagtail REST API during the node build, and it maps over the videos and creates a page with a video ID prop on each page, passes the paths back, and then this is just get static props for each individual page. So we then take that video ID param and pass it to video service get video so we can get the full video detail page once we are on that, and that is what gets passed down in here. So pretty simple path for getting your data into your or whatever front end you have. This example uses Next.js, but you might be using Solid, or you could even just be, maybe you have a Python Jinja um, architecture somehow that you want to just have your CMS live somewhere else. Really doesn't have to be a front-end JavaScript framework for you to use a headless architecture, really. I've been on projects before where built like custom Python static site generators and stuff, and we've technically gone a headless route. So you're not really totally restricted to JavaScript in this. This is just really the example. So now that we've looked at the code base, let's go back and actually look at the deployed site, and then we'll look at it locally and see how to run this code base locally. Okay, so here we are in our App Engine deployed backend. This is a site called CatTube, which just holds a video directory full of cat videos and YouTube. Like basically, it's just a collection of YouTube videos that either cats would like or they're about cats. And you can see we have a couple things. You can have an override thumbnail if you don't want to use the thumbnail from the video. And then the only required field here is video ID, which is used in the video player. And if we go back, you can see it is a little bit slow, and we'll talk about that here in a second, because I didn't use a huge database. But you can see this one doesn't have a thumbnail, and it's totally fine, just needs this video ID. So this is our Wagtail data set that gets sent through the API, and it's read every time we click deploy here. It will refresh and reload the page, and it sends a webhook request to Netlify to build the site. And you can see this nifty little message here shows us where to go. So we can see our new deploy is building, and it will generate all the static pages for the Wagtail site, and then we will be able to switch traffic to this. And while this is happening, let's just go to the site overview, and if you'll notice in here in this production deploys window, you'll see it says failed, but it's do not deploy is the name of the branch. That's just something that I set like the main deploy branch with a name that doesn't exist so that this happens, basically so that you can't deploy from the interface here. You can't trigger deploy or anything because it will go to a branch that doesn't exist. That way you can make sure people are only deploying from this deploy page, and kind of allows you to use Wagtail's page moderation feature to get the content out whenever you're, like on your schedule, basically, instead of as developers are pushing to the main branch. We can see this has finished building, and I have the Lighthouse tools added in here with Netlify. You can see it's got a performance score of 98. So we can just click Publish Deploy here, and that will make the current version of the site live. We can go to it right here. So you can see this is all of our content from the Wagtail site. This is our custom thumbnail. You'll see it's a different image than the one that shows here. By default, we just use the YouTube video ID to basically, like, you just create the URL for YouTube and add in the video ID, and you can use that to get different versions of the images. These are like the WebP versions, so that way it's in next-gen format for Lighthouse. And if you go on the About page, you can see the link to the repo into my GitHub if you want to connect. And these other pages are just some filler to make the site look a little bit bigger. This is the video detail page that I was showing you on the deploy step. So if we go back over to Netlify, to our deploy, can look at the build process here, and you can see that it generated all these different video IDs based on that query that we wrote of the REST API. So it returned these different video IDs. So then it fetched those full video detail pages for these watch pages. So that's how that happens. So this page can load super fast, doesn't have to hit the database at all, and you can watch this video. You can leave a pretend comment, you can like it, whatever you need. And yeah, that's basically the gist of how everything connects together. So now we can look at the site locally. So here we are in the project in VS Code. You can see there's some VS Code settings here to help you out a little bit. Black formatter for formatting the Python with organization of the imports, and it'll format on save. We also tell ESLint to only run in front end, and any .html files, we tell it to use Django HTML. In case you want to add any templates to, you could add HTML to alter just the Wagtail interface itself. So if you end up doing that, then this will give you the correct syntax highlighting. And then you'll want to have two terminals open so you can run both projects. So to run the backend, first you would run make dev env, and that will create your environment. I've already done that, and I've already activated it into my thing by env activate cattube env, which I've already done. You can see that I am in the cattube env right here. So now I don't need to migrate my database because I've already done that. I can run make migrate just to show you that. You can see it looks into the backend. Oh, looks like I do need to. So let's see, make migrations. So it looks like I altered the thumbnail field on the YouTube video page. So let's do make migrate. So a great example here. So now the database has been migrated, so I should be good to go. So let's do make dev. And you can see the backend is now running. And to go to so now let's start the front end also, before we go look at them live. So you're going to want to cd into front end, and I am using Z shell, but I'm just going to show cd just in case anybody doesn't know how to do that. And then in here, if you haven't already, you'll want to npm install. And I'm using Node version 18.19.0. If you're using NVM, you could hook into it using NVM use from the front end directory. And then we'll run npm run dev. That will boot up Next.js at localhost 3000. So we have our Wagtail site running at localhost 8000 and Next.js running at localhost 3000. So if we go up here, we should be able to load the site, and you can see it is slightly different videos on here. So that's how you know you're getting the data from your local Wagtail site. And you can see this is a different set of data. Um, Runs a little bit faster, so it's a nice place just to set everything up, test your model, and make sure it's all working before you end up deploying either a change to Wagtail or to your front ends. Could be either or really. If you want to test like a certain configuration on the Wagtail side of things with something like a new change to the front end, you're able to um, test in all different types of ways with this setup, which is why I really like it. Okay, so the next thing that I want to show you is how to proxy the production database. So we're going to kill the backend and the front end here, and we're going to open another terminal, and we'll just go back into the main repo. So over here, I'm going to run make proxydb. And you'll see that connects to my Cloud SQL database. And then over here, I'm going to use proxy true make dev. And if we do need to run migrations, it should tell us when we start up here. Yeah, so it looks like we do have a migration also that we need to run on the live site. So that's something that we can do right here. And the way you would do that is use proxy true make migrate. And this will just it'll connect to the database over here, run the migration on the cloud. All right. And then let's just cover deploying. So we're just going to make sure this version is also live up on the live Wagtail site. So we'll just do make deploy CMS. And that will run our App Engine command to deploy, or gcloud app deploy command that deploys to App Engine with our project. And we can see that process happening here. Okay, so I fast forwarded there, and you can see it is just finishing up, and it has finished. So one thing to note, if you look at your Wagtail site, you can see my URL deployed to right here. So you would just go to this URL that you have /admin to log in. But if you see some kind of an error or something happening when you deploy, just copy this here and paste it into the terminal, click enter, and it will show you the logs that are happening. So if there's like a Python dependency that's not working, or whatever it could be, that is how you debug issues that you're having once you deploy your Python app to Google Cloud. Okay, and one final thing that I want to go over is just all the stuff that you need to set up in Google Cloud in order to get this going. So you can see I'm in my CatTube project here that I created for this demo, and this is just what the main page looks like. This is where you can get your project ID that you use. So if you just search for this value in the repo, replace it with your project ID, you should be well on your way. The next thing we'll look at is just the two buckets that you'll need to create, and you can search for these values in the code base also, and replace them with whatever you decide to call your buckets. But this one is just for anything that Wagtail uploads. So you can see it's like Wagtail snippets, REST framework, just all this stuff, JavaScript, CSS, things that Wagtail itself is using. And then this is just our images and their conversions that Wagtail will do. They get stored here. So you'll need these two buckets created. And you'll also need a database. I used a pretty small database, just a Postgres 15 with 2 CPU, 8 gigabytes of memory. It's in the U.S. Central. It's a single region. So there are better configurations that you could use, but this works good for me for this particular project. I would consult with someone if you're not familiar with how to set up a database because this could get pretty expensive. So make sure you're monitoring the billing tab here to make sure you're not using more than what uh, you're willing to spend per month. And the next thing is Secret Manager. This is another thing you'll have to set up. So you'll find all of these different keys inside the code base, and really you'll just need to add all of these just like this into Secret Manager under your project that you've created. And your account info, this is just the JSON that's generated from your service account. So you'll also need a service account um, that you can create uh, on the credential screen. And that service account JSON file, you just paste like the text value of the whole JSON object directly into a field and call it account info. Build hook, that's just the URL that Netlify gives you for deploying. DB password is the password that you set up when you're creating this database. And Django secret key is just a key that you generate that goes into your production.py file. This allows you to store it secretly on the cloud so no one has access to that value. So that is pretty much everything. Thank you all for watching this tutorial and demo on Headless Wagtail. I hope that you decide to build Headless Wagtail sites on Google Cloud also. And thanks for watching.